and welcome to MyTwoSats, the show that looks at today's world through a Bitcoin-denominated lens. I'm your host, Susie Violet Ward, and today we're joined by Freddy New, CEO of B Hodl and co-founder of Bitcoin Policy UK. Freddy, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, thank goodness, this is actually working. Thank goodness for this. Thank you so much for coming on. I can't believe that you've actually come on today with the whole digital ID. I've got the clock and it just keeps clicking up. Like, honestly, it's shocking. This morning when we looked at it.
Sorry, is that the petition signatures? How many is it now?
716,000, and it's literally going up by 1,000 every few minutes.
That's crazy. It was at 300 or something when I signed last night, I think.
And it was at 500 just about an hour ago as well. Like, and I'm just watching it, just the ticker just going up, and I can't believe that you're on today as well. Like, because this is probably not one of our favourite subjects, but something that we have actually discussed a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run through the story, and then we'll definitely discuss this because this is absolutely terrifying. So, for people that don't know, the Labour government is planning a digital ID card called BritCard. It's almost as bad as Bitcoin, but maybe not. Every working adult will possibly need one, and employers and possibly landlords will use a phone app to confirm someone's right to live and work in the UK. But ministers say the plan will cut down on illegal immigration, and critics warn it could become a surveillance tool. The idea is just a proposal. It would need new laws and a public consultation to go ahead. But it will go ahead, though, don't you think? I mean, do you think that we can stop this? We've been talking about government IDs for a long time. It's going to be linked to CBDCs. It's almost too predictable that they have these crises that they then try and usher in these controls. They do it all the time. You know, what do you think? Where's this heading?
Well, can we stop this? I'd say yes. We stopped it before. Remember, it's not very like Tony Blair. I mean, the thing that I'm aware we're live, so I won't be as disgusting as I might otherwise be. There's nothing. Shall I say? There's nothing that excites Tony Blair more than the idea of an authoritarian ID card. And if you remember, he tried very hard to put it in place back in, if not the first, then definitely the second of his terms in government. Good grief! Is that the live ticker?
Yeah, it's just going. When I said it's just going up really, really quickly, like it's insane.
Well, that's fantastic. I obviously saw the news earlier this week, and I predictably started writing stuff. I think the important thing to know is, yes, this can be stopped. It's not necessarily inevitable. And it's important to know that in this, you are unusually powerful, and in a way that you often aren't, because this won't go through without new laws. New laws are made by MPs. All MPs care about is keeping their seat in Parliament, and that ultimately depends on you. So this wasn't a manifesto pledge from the Labour government. This wasn't therefore anything that anyone voted for. And is this in 24 hours?
I think so, yeah.
So if in 24 hours we can get nearly 750,000 signatures on a petition not to put ID cards in place, that sends a very strong message to any MP who's thinking of voting for this, that if you do, next election, you're out on your air, you'll lose your seat. And that messaging, some people mock the idea of how important that is, but it's fundamental to the way that our parliamentary representative democracy works.
It does, but don't you think that there'll be some coercion through mainstream media? I saw Lisa Nandy talking about it this morning. Did you listen to that as well? I don't know how they can defend it. And it was a tweet that you put out where you said these MPs are going to have to live in the world that they create. And I don't know if you got this sense from her, but did you feel like she didn't really even believe it? Like her heart wasn't in the messaging?
Well, yes, because as soon as you begin questioning this, it becomes very clear that the cards themselves don't solve the problems that they're pretending that they will solve. So the interview I had was on the Today program, and the questioning there was, well, hang on, there's an entire class of people in France called the sans-papiers, without papers, and they operate perfectly happily in a shadow economy, cash in hand. They all work illegally, and yet the requirements to have papers haven't done anything to stop that from happening. So suggesting that bringing in an ID card will immediately stop people working illegally is completely facile nonsense.
And but they do this all the time, though, don't they? They always make connections that we know aren't real. It, like the permacross.
And I put out a tweet last night, which credit to my friend on Twitter, Eggplant Elon. Sadly, I don't know his real name, but he's very articulate and writes very, very well. I quoted in full at the weekend, I think, a letter he'd written to his MP, which is actually, and I'd recommend you dig it up. It's extraordinarily moving. He talks about.
Can you send it to me and I'll put it up on the screen?
Oh yeah, let me. I'll send it to you by Signal. So he put out a fantastic letter talking about how many of his family had served in the military over the years, and I pulled out this one quote. I'll just read it to you. Freedom is not something the state grants. It is something the state must protect. Digital ID systems invert that principle, making the right to work, travel, bank, or access healthcare conditional on state approval. This is not freedom. And for me, I thought that was brilliantly written. That's in the letter, which I'll pull up. And that really goes to the fundamental principle here. Freedom is not something the state grants. It is something the state must protect. So the state does not have authority to tell me whether or not I am a person who has the right to use public transport, to go and see a doctor, to open a bank account. That is not dependent on whether or not I have a piece of paper or a digital QR code that defines whether or not I'm a recognized person for the purposes of the state. And that's a fundamental principle.
Yes, but we are sleepwalking into authoritarianism, and everything that they're doing feels like it's about control. I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about KYC and all the data collection, the fact that 250,000 people in the UK get debanked every year. CBDCs, I know that the Bank of England has said that they probably won't issue a CBDC, but stablecoins, in my opinion, are just the same thing. It's just a CBDC via the backdoor. They're not listening. And when we had that consultation at the Bank of England for CBDCs, just an example of where this has kind of happened before, there was no public discourse. Nobody was discussing it, and they put it through. And in actual fact, I only saw the Digital Pound Foundation on the BBC 3 days after the consultation had closed, and that should have been a discussion as big as Brexit.
Yes, it really should have done. But again, I return to the lawmaking point that we made earlier. The Bank of England's governing charter is predominantly set out in primary legislation, and in order to change that to do what they would need to do in order to issue a central bank digital currency, they'd need to pass new primary legislation, which is difficult and again isn't in the manifesto. The reason I bring things up in the manifesto is that it's a slightly geeky peculiarity of the way that the laws are made in Britain, and you and I have discussed this before. And we'll come back to that point. Yeah, this is a fantastic letter. So credit to Eggplant Elon here.
God, it is terrifying, though. I mean, if I had faith in the system and I actually thought we lived in a democracy, or a proper one, I know technically we do because you say that it's legal and therefore it is, but we don't really. We're coerced. We live in a psyop. They usher things in. They create chaos so that we accept it. They don't give people the truth. There's no public discussions, and so things like this to normal people would just be like, well, I'm not doing anything wrong. I've got nothing to hide. It's fine. Like they would see us as being hyperbolic.
I challenge that slightly, partly because of the huge reaction that we saw previously. Culturally, we seem to have a very, very strong aversion in the UK to being told to produce your papers. And that's ultimately what killed this the last time they tried it. And although we had wartime ID cards, those were scrapped within 5 to 7 years after the war, simply because people didn't like them and felt that it was un-British to carry them. The idea that you can stop a free British person in the street and ask their papers, the appropriate response to that is GFY, and it should continue. I don't think they fully have mapped out what they've unleashed, and I disagree slightly that we would be seen as conspiracy theorists here. The vast majority of people won't want this. I don't think. I mean, I feel like the guy in the meme, the Grand Theft Auto one. Oh shit! Here we go again. It's like, why do we keep on having to have the same bloody fights? It's so annoying. Can't they just back off and leave us alone?
Well, exactly. But this has been on the cards, hasn't it? We've discussed this for years, knowing that this was ultimately going to be where it's heading. And now it is heading there. It's the direction of travel that's expected. Do you really think that we can wind it back?
I think, I think it's a lovely quote from Jefferson, isn't it? The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots. And unfortunately, that kind of is why you need to keep on having the same fights, because, and we've spoken about this before, haven't we? I don't think left and right are a very sensible demarcation anymore. It's really around the two types of thinking. One type of thinking that people should be free to get on with their own lives and are mature enough to to handle their own affairs, and the other that people don't know well enough and they need daddy government to tell them what to do and to have information about every aspect of their lives. So that, and most of the problems that we discuss arise from a tension between those two worldviews. One is a more sort of human focused one, and the other is a state focused one. And people will naturally split into whether they think the state is and should be in charge of everything, or whether individual people should be. And I'm very much on the latter side.
But most people want to outsource their thinking to government because they think that governments have their best interests at heart. People still believe that governments are there to serve them. I mean, I know that technically they are, but they don't.
Yes, I kind of agree with that. Technically they are. Factually, they almost certainly don't. And there's always a tension, I feel, though, between the conclusions that we draw about the intentions of the people who make up government. Remember, government doesn't exist without people. It's just made up of other people, and those people will predominantly, I think, have good intentions. They will think that what they're doing is right. And so, if Keir Starmer is a strong supporter of ID cards, he will have intellectually justified that himself because he believes that that's the right thing to do. I mean, he's obviously wrong, but I don't think.
You know how much I hate that expression.
What
is the right thing to do? Whenever they say that, it just makes me think, oh, it's because it's the right thing to do. Have you not noticed when people go on the news rounds, that's all they seem to say? It's the right thing to do.
I haven't, but I will now.
Notice that every time that gets said, and it's regularly as well, I'm just like, no. It's all, for me, it's like an alarm bell that it really isn't the right thing to do, just because it's such an awful catchphrase that seems to get adopted a lot.
Yes, it is rather awful. But fun. But I think people. We've mentioned before. There's a long line of philosophical thinking going all the way back to Plato's dialogues. In the early dialogue, Socrates talks a lot about acting virtuously and how people always think that what they're doing is virtuous. Mm-hmm. Is that an extra 30,000? That's what we've been talking.
I'm telling you, it's literally going up just like so quickly. I've never seen a petition like it, I don't think. Can you remember a time that a petition was this popular?
There was one to have a second referendum, which got a large number of votes, didn't there? Let me just look that up.
I wonder what it's not going to be long before it's at 1 million. I wonder what it's actually going to reach. And I'm actually surprised that a lot of people are filling it in, because so many people that I speak to day to day, they really don't have a problem with it. They want it for the convenience. They think that it's going to solve problems. It will make their life easier, and they've got nothing to hide. So when I saw a poll this morning that 80% don't want digital IDs and only 20% do, I was really surprised by that, because I thought largely the public were just kind of went along with it.
Well, some of the messaging is utterly extraordinary. So my favorite one, did you see this in The Independent? Said that the digital ID card would help us fix potholes. That's not a joke. It did actually. So that they're trying to say that if you had this ID supercard, yes, Tony Blair's think tank, here we are, publicly backed super ID card, which could be used to report potholes. So what they've done is they've identified the thing that pisses off almost every single person who uses the road system in Britain, potholes. So how can we sell this ID card to an unwilling public? I know, we'll tell them that if you get an ID card and it will magically fix potholes. I haven't read through the logic. Well, I've read their argument, which sounds utterly ridiculous. So you would have a reporting app which would be linked to your digital ID card and would enable you to report potholes. The flaw in the logic is obviously that reporting the pothole makes no fucking difference as to whether or not it actually gets fixed. So the potholes will remain, and you'll have sold your digital identity to a national database, and before you know it, the North Koreans will have hacked that, and all of your honeypot information will be happily available on the dark web. So, well done, Tony Blair.
It's so obvious where this is heading. It's obvious the dangers that it's going to cause. I don't know why I'm smiling. I think it's just nerves, because it's just so awful. I actually I don't have much hope that we're going to be able to stop this, because we've seen the government usher in some really, I mean, COVID was a great example of a time that made absolutely no sense, where people just complied anyway. Isn't this just going to be the same thing?
I think coming so soon after COVID, it might have COVID might have been a blessing in disguise in that respect, because prior to COVID, I don't think many people realised quite how restrictive a government could be. And whatever your opinion on whether lockdowns were valid or not, I don't think anyone enjoyed being restricted in the way that they were. So even if you're someone who thought the lockdowns shouldn't have happened, then you're already probably on board. And even if you think the lockdowns were medically required, no one enjoyed being locked up at home, or not allowed to go for a walk or see their friends, or have their children miss out on a year and a half of school. So I think because that
killed me.
Well, no, God, because those unpleasant memories are so fresh in the mind, I think we're at a strangely strong position in history to resist ID cards.
I don't think it is. Why are people not more angry? I actually think that people have forgotten about it, considering what we have been through and how traumatic it actually was. I think people should be a lot more angry about it, and yet everybody just seems to have forgotten and moved on. So I'm not convinced.
I kind of disagree. Think how much chatter there is still around the anti-authoritarian movement, the libertarian movement. The people are still angry about lockdowns, even though they finished 5 years ago. And my own children were small at the time, and they didn't like being locked up. And if it's fresh for them, it's fresh for us as well. And apart from anything else, it's very good recent data of how restrictive a government can be.
Yeah, but I honestly do think that we are a little bit in a bubble, where we're surrounded by people who are like-minded. But when I talk to my neighbors or my kids' parents, they're all very much on the side almost of the normal BBC narrative, and I just don't think people see it like we do. I'm surprised that this petition is getting as much attention as it is, just because day to day when I talk to people generally, they don't see it in my world.
Well, a lot of people are like that meme. That's cool. Do you see the game last night? And fundamentally, most people are like that. The majority of people don't care about these things. The changes come at the edge cases. The vast majority of people don't care hugely. They don't go to protests, and that's kind of fine. And we shouldn't be telling them what to do. But changes made by the people at the edge, at the fringes, who are sufficiently motivated to make a loud noise and to do things about it. And I think in this case, the people at the edge cases are very, very angry and will engage in civil disobedience if this ever happens. And long before it happens, will be lobbying MPs and representatives and telling them in no uncertain terms that if you vote for this, you're out on your air, you will lose your seat. And it's a gift for the next government. And if Labour bring this in, all the next government have to do is say, as soon as we come in, day one, we're scrapping ID cards. They've got my vote.
I think he came. I'm sure I saw something this morning that he was just like, no, this is ridiculous, and we would reverse this. Yeah, that's if reform got in.
Great. Yeah. Well, he's going to win votes with that, isn't he? What's the?
It just. Oh, sorry.
I know. I wondered how many votes he was going to win by looking at the tracker.
Well, that's another poll. So the poll of whether or not people want the digital IDs. 80 no, 20% yes. I think there was another huge landslide poll with reform as well. I mean, they're smashing it out the park too. I think the people are talking and they are making decisions. I just don't know. Maybe it's just the area I live in and the people that I'm surrounded by, because I do feel like nobody else quite sees the world the way that I do, especially in terms of the direction it's going in and the authoritarianism that's creeping in.
Well, Labour have always had authoritarian tendencies, but again, and not being mean or rude about them, but psychologically, the principle there is fundamentally that the state knows best, and it's the duty of the state to conduct as many of your daily functions as possible.
Look at that,
just shy of quarter of them. If people are watching and are able to share the link to the post, are you able to put the link to the petition in your show notes?
I don't know. Let me ask my producer. I just say.
I looked up the number of votes on the second referendum. 2 million is the target. So we need to get over to. Yeah, that was big. But this is 750 in the first day, which is not bad.
Yeah, that will be easy. But the thing with these digital IDs, do you think that it kind of flips the presumption of innocence on its head?
Up to a point, yeah. This is something we've talked about before, haven't we? Particularly in terms of banking and access to finance. So for anyone who's not familiar with it, the presumption of innocence is a very, very long established legal principle, originally developed under English law and now pretty much recognized worldwide. And the idea there is that being charged with a criminal offense and being convicted of that is extremely serious and is never something to be taken lightly. The state, one of the few good functions of the state, is to maintain a well-functioning legal system and to ensure that justice is done and that criminal action is punished. However, if the state arrests you, the initial starting principle is that you haven't done what the state says you've done. So if a police officer comes to arrest you, Susie, the presumption is that you're innocent, and everyone will be familiar with the term innocent until proven guilty. That's where it comes from. And the whole process of a criminal trial in front of a jury of your peers is that the state has to prove to that jury beyond reasonable doubt that you have done what the state alleges you have done. So I know, let's say you've committed credit card fraud. The state then has to present evidence in court. You get the chance to challenge that evidence. You have legal representation to argue your case. The state has representation to argue their case. And then the jury decides at the end. And I've been on a jury, and I'm still a practicing lawyer. People take it very, very, very seriously. And the foreman of the jury will set out very carefully, if the prosecutor has failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Susie has committed that credit card fraud, you have to acquit. The problem being that over the last 20 years or so, a lot of the should we say preemptive law enforcement has now been delegated to banks. So everyone will have experienced trying to buy something innocuous and then being refused because you haven't proved it. I tried to buy parking yesterday. I parked at the station, and it was incredibly difficult to pay for the parking because the app I was trying to do, it refused to believe that I was who I said I was. And
I can't believe we're at that stage. I feel really bad for some people as well. And I don't like downloading apps on my phone. Like, you have loads of stuff that you have to agree to that you don't have time to read. It's all there constantly. And all you want to do is just put £1 in the meter and park your car. I mean, and that's the thing. It goes back to the whole digital ID, CBDC control thing. And the video that you shared, of how this is going to go. And it's happening in China. I mean, people have documented how this has been linked to digital credit scores and how it will actually play out. It's not a thing of fiction. It is actually happening.
No, that's the worrying thing. It's not fictional, but it sounds as though it should be. That video, Marty Bent shared it. Who created it? I can't remember.
So do you think the connection between digital IDs and immigration is a logical one? And do you think it'll actually make any difference?
The connection between digital ID and CBDCs?
No, digital IDs and immigration, because that's why they want to usher this in, isn't it? So that they can actually try and stop the boats.
Well, I don't think it will either. And again, this was raised on the interview with Nandi this morning. And they'd actually had an interview with someone who'd gone out to speak to people who were trying to cross the channel. They said, well, no, why would the threat of a digital ID stop me from coming? The important thing to notice is that these people coming over are already undocumented in many cases. So when they arrive, they will be processed and given documentation to help with asylum applications, for example. So the idea that giving them another piece of paper in addition to the one, albeit a digital piece, I suppose, in addition to the ones that they already have, is just ludicrous, surely. Fundamentally, it goes to the rather silly point that most of the AML restrictions don't affect criminals because they ignore them anyway. Exactly. They only affect law-abiding people like you and me.
Well, this is exactly it, and we will end up building a mass data collection system, and they've proven time and time again they can't look after our data. They don't have the systems. They don't even patch their systems properly, and yet they want to hold all of this data, and it'll connect everything. And they won't look after it. It won't solve the problem. It will cause harm in the real world, and yet they still want to push it through. I mean, is this incompetence in its worst form? Is this what it really boils down to?
Well, I think it's fair to say that they probably are relatively incompetent, but again, I don't have much insight into the decision-making processes of government, so that's just my opinion rather than a statement of fact. And I always tend to think that, as I've said before, people are acting in good faith with what they think are good intentions. It's just that what they think are good intentions are not necessarily the way that the rest of us want to live our lives and want to involve in being and how we want to integrate and interact with society.
But why don't they see it? What is it they're not seeing?
People have different opinions, don't they? And it's the psychological difference between people who think that there's quite a wide ideological split there. Some people tend to think that individuals should be free to get on with their own lives and manage their affairs as they see fit. And the other set of people think, well, the government needs to have more oversight and control and protection of the way that society is managed. And it's a managerial class as opposed to an entrepreneurial class. in psychological terms, I think.
The thing is, communities, in my opinion, communities are what keep people in line. Laws don't. You can have lots of laws, but it just won't make any difference. It really is the people around you and making certain things acceptable or socially unacceptable. I just think it's the breakdown of community that's actually led us to where we are, and all of these measures, they're not going to help. They're just going to tie people up in knots. We're nearly approaching 750,000. It's going up quickly, isn't it?
It is exciting.
Exciting. I want to actually see it. But do you think that, because look, you're a lawyer and you do actually believe in the rule of law. I don't really. I think that it's too complicated and normal people can't really abide by things if you need to actually have a degree to understand what it is that you're supposed to be abiding by. And I think that the things that keep people in check, like I said, are communities and people and social norms, not necessarily rules and laws. And I think until our society fundamentally changes, I think they're just going to keep trying to usher in new laws, which will have absolutely no effect. And really, we just need to, there we go. Yeah, really.
Oh, well done.
Yes. We have to just change and rebuild society. Surely that's the answer.
Well, that's an easy thing to say, but what do you actually mean by that?
What I mean by that is just having better communities where people actually engage with each other, not relying on the state so much, but relying on each other's help, maybe. So they say it takes a village to raise a family. That kind of thing, having people around to help. Like we're like a little nuclear family. We don't really have any help at all, and it's really, really stressful. It's just the four of us. But if we had like my nonna up the road, or my mum up the road, and my dad could come and help out, and I had a sister, it would make life a lot easier. But we've just lost all of those connections, and I think it's the loss of those connections and broken money. Obviously, the debasement of our money, the fact that you're having to work so much harder for less, that it's this awful treadmill where you actually seem to achieve nothing. It's all of that societal breakdown that's leading us to a point where where our government feels like it has to implement these laws, where in actual fact they're useless.
Yeah, well, there's quite a lot to consider there.
Yes.
There's a difference between the rule of law and obeying laws. So maybe that's important to point out. So the rule of law is the principle that society and those who make laws have set out I suppose a proper way to interact with each other, whether on a personal level or between businesses, and that ultimately everyone should be treated equally in the eyes of the law. So I suppose the rule of the law conceptually is more like an operating system for society. So it enables society to function and gets out of the way. The problem arises when you have so many different laws that you need to obey that it's impossible to fully comply with those. And a good example of this is the tax code in America, for example, which is so Byzantine and unbelievably complex and so incredibly long that no one, I think, can read it any longer and or understand it. There's the famous letter that Donald Rumsfeld used to send every year to the IRS when he submitted his tax return. It's worth pulling that up, actually, quite funny. He would send this in saying, I've tried to fill in my tax return to the best of my ability. I like to think I'm a relatively bright guy. I was Secretary of State for Defense, and I've been to Harvard or Yale.
Find that for me and send it to me.
I'll see if I can find it. Yeah, you can put it up. And it said, despite all this, I have absolutely no idea whether what I've written in my tax return is correct. And I'm sorry if I've made any mistakes. I'll see if I can find it over to you now. But that's a good example of the way in which too much law actually negatively affects the proper functioning of society. And it's a problem that's inherent in the way our political system works, is that a politician's job is kind of to make new laws today. So I don't think there's ever an instance of you get to the end of a parliament and find there are fewer laws in the statute book than at the beginning. So we only ever have more laws. That there's a strong argument for appealing or retiring a lot of them, to be honest. Let me see if I can find this one. If I send it to you by Signal, does that work?
Yeah, that's great. So the point is, these digital IDs will do nothing. Nothing. That all they will do is create more harm. I mean, they won't fix any of the problems that they say that they want to. And I don't know why they're not listening. And it's quite overwhelming, the opposition to this. And considering they're on a bit of a sticky wicket anyway, you know, they're not a popular government. Whose idea is it to usher this in at this time? They're not making any friends.
No, they're not. I mean, I'm not quite sure why Keir Starmer thought this was going to be a vote winner. I mean, but
should we ask him? We're going to see him next week, aren't we?
He's not very good at politics, is he?
No, he's not very good at politics.
So I just pinged you a copy of that letter.
Okay. I don't know if I'll be able to bring it up because it's not a link; it's like a screenshot.
Hang on, let me see if I can. I can send you a link as well, I think. Here you are. I've got a link. 1 second.
Look at this, 755,000. I mean, that's a lot. It's like, what is it? 1,000 a minute, roughly?
Yeah, roughly. That's impressive.
God, you know what? This is such an interesting subject. I haven't even got onto the second story, which is actually also quite is kind of linked to this. Donald Trump's tax letter.
Yeah, this is wonderful.
And you say he sends this every year?
Well, he did. He's now dead.
Oh, sorry, Donald. Oh, God. I don't know why I had Donald Trump in my head. Okay, got it.
Yeah, that's finished. This notice to alert you folks, yeah, that I do not know whether or not my tax returns are accurate, which is a sad commentary on governance in our nation's capital.
That is perfect.
That's the point. You know, the laws, the tax code was just too complicated even for someone like Donald Rumsfeld to work it out.
Yeah, I find that with most things, and I kind of came to the realization a little while ago, which actually made me feel really sad, that in order to operate in this world, you have to understand everything. You have to understand what your accountant is doing. You have to understand a little bit about what, maybe if you've got a solicitor or your house, you know, you have to understand everything. You can't just outsource your thinking to professionals, and that includes the government. You have to actually take it on board yourself and kind of keep them in check, because even they make mistakes quite often, in fact.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time. Do you know what? Because we haven't got much time left, I'm going to move on to this next story, because I actually think that this kind of feeds in really nicely, and it's actually kind of feeds into the broken money and the fact that Farage is probably going to undo this. So just let's take another look at this. So Nigel Farage and Richard Tice recently met with the Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey. Farage pressed the governor to embrace cryptocurrency, not too keen on that term, and questioned the bank's quantitative easing policy. So Richard Tice described the meeting as significant and said Bailey appeared to be engaged. Farage welcomed the cautious tone, but said the bank was still moving too slowly. Reform previously announced that it would accept Bitcoin donations and call for a strategic reserve of crypto. Okay, so like, he's obviously on a learning journey, and that's fine. I don't think
Bailey or Farage,
all of them, but mostly Farage, really, because he doesn't seem to understand the difference between Bitcoin and crypto at this point, which I think is less than ideal. But he is the only person actually having this conversation. And when he talks about the issue with quantitative easing, I mean, it's a really good point. I was trying to get some figures up for how much the interest actually costs our country, and it depends on the timeline and where you measure it from. But my God, we're wasting a lot of money on interest. So I think the way that it works is the Bank of England create money to buy UK bonds, and then the government gets the cash from selling the gilts, and then the government pays the interest on the gilts, which then usually flows back as a net zero to the Bank of England. But as the interest rates go up, that cost gets higher, and then it becomes a burden on the taxpayer. So
it's partly, actually, you're broadly correct there. And then the important point to note as well is that a lot of these gilts were inflation linked. So the rate, in other words, was linked to the rate of inflation, which was fine in a low interest rate environment, but became punitive when the rates went up. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Oh God, just dropped my pen. Yes, so it's just becoming very expensive is the point. So these are the two things that Farage and Tice went to discuss. So embracing cryptocurrency and quantitative easing with the Bank of England. Do you think that anybody else are having these discussions? Because how much debt actually costs us? Because I think war and debt interest are the two largest bills that our government have. And, if we're forced to pay tax into a system that is feeding fiscal mismanagement and, debt interest, not necessarily hospitals, schools, and community initiatives, should we be able to say, no, actually, I don't really want to be a part of that? We can't opt out, can we?
I can give you some numbers, at least these are rough numbers. I know that we currently spend about 55 billion a year on the military, and around about 100, or maybe just shy of 100 billion a year on education. We already spend more on either the military or on education on debt interest. So we spend about 110 billion a year just on paying the interest, and that's not even paying down the principal. That's just basically having an interest-only mortgage. So we pay nearly double on debt interest than what we spend on the military, and we spend tens of billions more on debt interest than we pay on educating our children. So in my view, we're already at a bit of an inflection point, because that number is only going to go and get bigger and bigger and bigger, because we have to create more and more money. Did you see the stat today that nearly half of households now nearly half of Britons live in households which are net tax recipients rather than net tax contributors?
So we're in a debt spiral. There's no way we're going to get out of this. The only solution is debasement, isn't it? Yeah. Is there any other way?
No one's successfully tried any other way. Actually, there was a period of deliberate hyperinflation in Israel in the late 80s, early 90s, I believe. The idea there was that for a very short period of time, you massively push up the rate of inflation, and that destroys the actual value of your debts. So tactically, that's something that's been used in the past. But what governments normally go for is simple debasement, because fundamentally, no government wants to do a hard default, which is when you simply hold up your hands and say you can't pay, you're not honouring your debts, because the whole of our traditional monetary system is based on a series of obligations and liabilities. All money is someone else's liability, but it's also another person's asset. And so there's a huge incentive for you not to default at any point, because you're not only destroying your own credit worthiness and credit rating in the future, but you're also which means that you can't raise additional money in future. You're also destroying the value of someone else's asset, and that effectively has an unknowable knock-on cascade of potential defaults.
So they can't do it, is what you're saying?
No, so you soft default. You don't go for a hard default, and a soft default is where you debase the currency to the point, and it has a similar effect to the period of hyperinflation. You debase the currency to the point where you no longer effectively, if you owe creditors $1 trillion, but you inflate your currency to the point where $1 trillion will only buy you a loaf of bread, then that's fine. You just, well, it's not fine, but it lets you pay your debt back.
Yeah, I've got one of those notes over there with that $100 million, an actual note, and it really does. You know, when you actually hold it and you see it, it makes you realise that it can happen. Because I think that the reason why a lot of people in the UK don't understand Bitcoin is because they haven't felt the pain, and they've lived through this period of stability for the past kind of 40, 50 years where everything's been good. You know, and especially in the 70s and 80s, where you could have one salary, a house, a car, go on holiday, and everything was fine. It's the insidious drip that has led us to where we are now, where, you know, you have to have 2 salaries, if not 3, just to survive. Full-time working people are going cap in hand to the government asking for tax credits, which I just can't believe that we've got to that point, that you can be a full-time working person and still have to ask for help. Like, how does our economy not work? Where even if you have an unskilled job, because my grandparents were immigrants and they both came over to England and moved to Bedford to do the crap jobs that the English people didn't want to do. But they still had everything that they needed. They still had a car. They still went on holiday. But they were my nonna worked in the brick factories in Bedford, and my nonna was a dinner lady and worked in factories, but they still had everything that they needed. You just wouldn't be able to do that now.
No, it's impossible. I mean, for me, a lot of the problems come back to the easy availability of credit. You know, lower interest rates result in the creation of more and more money. And again, using an example that's familiar to everyone, one of the reasons houses are so expensive is not because houses have got better, but because it's become easier to borrow money in order to buy those houses, and therefore, because there's essentially no cap on the ability of banks to create that new money to write new mortgage loans, and they're heavily incentivized to sell mortgages. They're a great, easy product. They're basically free money for the bank and a stable income stream into the bank. You just have effectively a crack up boom in house prices over the last 50 to 60 years, largely as a result of new money creation rather than anything else. But that's quite a subtle point that not many people will understand, unfortunately.
So the value of our money has gone down, not the value of your house has gone up.
Yeah, if you price houses in houses, your house is worth one house. It's just the measuring stick that we use to measure houses is an elastic one.
Yeah,
and
it's a shame more people don't realise that.
It is.
So when they went to go and speak to the Bank of England, they said what I think the problem is that I'm not actually sure that in Parliament anyone really understands the relationship between fiscal policy, monetary policy, and the relationship with the bank. That's when you do speak to most people, including MPs, and even ask them that question, what is money? Most don't understand that.
No, and unfortunately, most people don't realise what an important question that is. I don't quite know how you change that narrative, and personally, I find my own friends don't really care and aren't interested. What is it that makes you care? That's actually a hard question to answer.
No, I don't think it is. I think it is just having some sort of experience or some sort of pain in your life that does actually make you realize. Because if you've only known stability and you've only experienced a world where everything has worked, you're not going to look outside of that bubble and consider a reality where actually perhaps everything doesn't work and it's actually collapsing.
Yeah.
So it boils down to pain, doesn't it? So it depends on how comfortable your friends are, the kind of environment that they've grown up in, what they've experienced. So you've had a couple of life-changing experiences when you had to leave Syria and Zimbabwe due to instability. I haven't had anything like that, but I did go to Malawi when I was 14, and I saw a lot there during that 3 weeks that I was there that really shocked me and opened my eyes. For example, there were a lot of exceptionally poor people, and I think I even probably walked past people that were dead, like almost certainly. But then you look at the government buildings and they're opulent and big and grand, and the amount of money that is obscene, and the cars that they drive into these buildings and the gates and everything. It's just a completely different world to the world outside it. And when you see that kind of that juxtaposition between the government and the people, and the harm that is being done at such a young age, it really stayed with me. And I think it was that experience alone that made me realize what was possible.
Yeah, I think that's fair and sensible. And you see the same thing in a lot of countries that are aid recipients. Unfortunately, I remember everyone in the cabinet, in Mugabe's cabinet in Zimbabwe, drove around in very, very nice cars and lived in gigantic palaces and mansions. And a lot of that money didn't find its way to where it was supposed to go, unfortunately.
No. And when you actually see that in real life, what governments can do to their people, then it's very naive to actually think that it can't happen to us. And so that's why when you think, well, what is it that needs to happen? Unfortunately, people need to feel the pain.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Yeah.
Look at that, 770,000.
Yay!
Okay, let's have a sweepstake. What time do you think it will be when it gets to 1 million?
At this rate, it'll probably be done by mid-afternoon.
Okay, so you think in an hour that's going to be 1 million signatures?
No, mid-afternoon.
Oh, mid-afternoon, not midday. Okay, so what's that? 2, 3?
2, 3. It'll hit 1 million.
Okay, all right then. Yeah, I think we could get there sooner than that, actually, because it's going up really quickly. I'm going to say by 1 o'clock.
Excellent. Did you see the rather nice, maybe to finish, sorry, we've run over slightly, there, in our BP UK group, I think Jace has shared a tweet from Keir Starmer opposing ID cards 5 years ago.
Well, oh my goodness, no, I haven't seen that.
That's very funny.
Let me have a look. Oh yeah, he says the old tweets are always the best. Let me get this up. Yep, brilliant. He's got a lot to answer for. Oh my goodness, yeah, the 29th of July 2020. Yeah. The government plans on voter ID risk locking people out of democracy.
Yes, there you go. Same point.
So what made him change his mind? And it wasn't the boats.
I mean, charitably, I think they are flailing around for anything that they can pin to migration. So they, I think, already know they're going to lose the next election quite badly. But the one Hail Mary pass might be if they can demonstrate that they've taken strong action against illegal migration, inbound illegal migration. And now they're throwing everything at the wall to see what will stick.
But this, though, come on. Like,
well, this comes with the added benefit of enabling them to spy on everyone forever.
Horrific. Absolutely horrific. Okay, well, do you know what? Thank you so much. I can't believe these are the two subjects that we probably discussed the most. So to have these both on today when you're on, it's actually really cool. I don't hold out much hope like you do. When I saw the way that the whole CBDC thing was run, I found it really, really shocking, and actually wrote an article in my column a few years ago about how it was actually a national scandal. And I think this is going to be along those lines, and I don't think they're going to listen. But hopefully they will.
I don't think they'll listen, but I don't think they'll get it through either.
You think they'll listen, but what? Sorry?
I don't think they'll listen, but I don't think they'll get it through. there's going to be a huge amount of opposition to this, and they don't have any political capital to burn anymore. They have no goodwill left. So why die in a ditch over this? I think at some point they'll take the political decision to wind it back.
But why even mention it anyway? Like, why are they even going through this? Like, at what point did they think it was a good idea? And if they thought it was a good idea, then why and how? Like, that's the part that blows my mind.
It's because they love thought crime. They want to control you and control everything you do, say, and think. That's where they're coming from.
Thought crime. Do you know what? It is worse than 1984. This really is. And I think that it probably won't actually get better for another kind of 10, 20 years. I'm actually bracing myself for a couple of decades of just nightmare.
Well, I look forward to that with great enthusiasm.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Freddy. So that's all we have time for today on MyTwoSats. And a special thanks to my guest, Freddy, for joining us. Stay tuned for the Roxom Report coming up next.